I like to start by saying that I think a lot of people assume that I'm going to talk about, overcoming challenges and having, lots of difficulties throughout my life, and that perhaps I've had a really, really tough life. But in fact, my life is not as tough as what people may actually think. I've chosen very much to focus on what I do have and what I can do. And as Samantha said, my story is very much one about acceptance and resilience and gratitude. I think it's probably quite important for me to go back to when I was born, because I think that I actually hit the jackpot when it comes to parents, and I think that my mum and dad really laid the foundations for how my life was going to progress. So I think that my story actually starts well before I was born, back in July 1983, which is about 5 months before I arrived. And my mum and dad were at a checkup with their obstetrician. My mum had a very normal pregnancy. She had felt well. She felt, normal movements. There was nothing to suggest that anything was untoward. And when they were at this obstetrician appointment, my parents just asked. They said, "Oh, will you be doing an ultrasound?" Now, it was back in the 1980s, remember, and ultrasounds weren't done as a matter of routine. They were really reserved for circumstances where perhaps the pregnancy hadn't been tracking along too normally, or doctors suspected that there may have been something wrong. And so the doctor said to my mum and dad, he said, "Look," he said, I don't usually do them as a matter of routine. He said, "But if you are concerned," he said, "I can do one." He said, "But you need to be aware that if I do find something," he said, "I may ask you some really difficult questions, and you both may have to make some really difficult decisions. Are you prepared to do that?" And my parents said, "Nope." They said, "Never mind, we don't need to have an ultrasound." So they tracked along, and I arrived via a natural delivery in December of 1983. And it was my dad, along with the attending doctor, who actually saw me first. My mum had no idea that I popped out without arms, and nobody was expecting it. I think the doctor actually told my dad not to say anything to my mum because she was obviously exhausted from labour. The nurses sort of wrapped me up in blankets and they whisked me away to the nursery, and they muttered something about, needing to do some tests. And my poor dad sat there next to my mum for quite a while. He didn't say anything. I think he was in a little bit of shock. And he eventually said, "Jen, I'm just feeling a little bit woozy. I think I need to go and get some air." So he got up and he made his way through to the nursery to find out what was happening. And the matron there gave him a sedative, I think, just to settle his nerves a little bit. And then she said, "Yeah, would you like to hold your daughter?" And so it was my dad who held me for the very first time, all by himself in that nursery. And it wasn't long after that the matron and my dad came back to the room where my mum was. I was still wrapped up in blankets, so my mother still had no idea. And the obstetrician stood at the door and said to my parents, "Your baby's got perfect motor reflexes and coordination and a complete absence of both upper limbs." And my poor parents, or my mum said, "Oh, I'm sorry, you're going to have to repeat what you've just said." And he said, "Oh, your baby's got no arms." And with that, he turned around and left the room. And so,
Oh wow, okay.
yeah, he didn't hang around. He just left. And I think that, my dad, I remember my parents telling me that my dad said to my mum at that point, he said, "I promised to give all of our family and friends a call when our baby arrived, and that's what I'm going to do." And so he hopped up and he went into the hospital corridor and he made those phone calls that all new dads do when the baby arrives. And so many of my parents' friends and family actually wanted to stay away and just give them space and give them time to process. And they said, "No, please come to the hospital. Please come and meet Kerry Lee." So that was...
Now, Kerry, did you have brothers and sisters at this time? Were you a first child,
No,
or?
I was the first child. So
Okay.
my mum said, in hindsight, after having my sister who came along 2.5 years later, my mum says she remembers only ever feeling movement in sort of one corner of her tummy, and had she known any different, so obviously I was just kicking. There were no little arms punching around. So she said, in hindsight, yes, there were signs that perhaps something wasn't quite right, but as a first time mother, she had no idea that was, not
Thing.
what something not to expect. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So what
Sorry.
was I'm quite interested in exploring the resilience shown by your parents, because
Mm,
I have some questions here that I'm going to ask you. And one of them has to do with your parents,
mm.
because the resilient mindset that you have, that was evident in your parents from birth.
Very much so. Yeah. Very,
And
very much so.
what is that? Where does that come from with them, do you think?
I'm not sure. I think my mom and dad are very much a team. I've always looked up to them and how they've handled challenges throughout their life. You know, both as a married couple and as parents. And my mom and dad always sort of forged together. And I think that when I was born, they forged together, and it's always been a matter of fact for our family. So my folks weren't interested in trying to find out why or who was to blame or what went wrong. It was just, this is our baby. This is the hand that we've been dealt. And we just have to get on with parenting Kerry Lee and finding ways to help her cope in a world that's not going to be designed for somebody without arms. They were really specific about not wrapping me up in cotton wool, not wrapping me up in some sort of cocoon, because they knew that the minute I stepped out of my home, I was going to enter a world that wasn't designed for people without arms, and I had to learn
Right.
to function and navigate in that world.
And how did that start?
I think there was a lot of, if I showed any signs of, oh, why me or poor me, it was like, no, 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 no. Yes, life is going to be a little bit difficult for you with feet, but let's focus on what you can do here. Let's focus on the things you can do. Let's find ways around the things that you think you can't do. But I
Yeah.
think there also came conversations around acceptance. So there were no pity parties allowed in our house. I think my parents were empathetic that there were some things that upset me as a child and that I couldn't do, but they were also very honest with me, and it was very matter of fact. Like, yep, unfortunately, that's something you're not going to be able to do, but let's have a
Mhm.
look at the things that you can do.
Mm.
And I think one of the conversations that I had with my folks really early on was quite telling, because we did explore the option of getting prosthetic limbs when I was around 5.
Okay.
Um, and we visited another family. There's a little girl my age as well, and she just had artificial arms fitted. And I remember, I still remember the day, because I looked at these arms. I thought, oh man, they look really heavy and uncomfortable. Like
I
I
don't
eyeing
need
off,
those.
I
Yeah.
was eyeing off these arms, like, I don't know about this. And they didn't seem to do an awful lot. And my parents were very adamant that if we went down the artificial limb route, it wasn't to make me look like everybody else. It was going to
Yes.
be for functional reasons. They'd spent a lot of time and effort in making sure that I was very comfortable with how I looked, and I
Hmm.
accepted that I looked different. So
Hmm.
artificial arms were very much about, well, are they going to give Kerry Lee any more independence than what she already has?
Right.
And so um, it was a couple of days after, visiting this family with these with this little girl with artificial arms, and my mum said to me, oh, how do you feel about getting artificial arms? And I said, well, mum, I said, I've got two questions. I said, if I'm playing with my friends in the playground and we're holding hands, I said, am I going to feel my friend's hands? And she said, no, you're not going to feel your friend's hand. And I said, oh. And I said, if I fall over and I cut my arm, am I going to bleed? And she said, no, you're not going to bleed. They're plastic. I said, well, I don't need them then. They serve no purpose. And that was
Yeah.
actually the last time that we spoke about artificial arms. So
Yeah.
I think they were just very matter of fact about our circumstances and my circumstances, and were very realistic about the things that may not be achievable for me, and may be difficult, but very much focused on, well, hang on, you've got all these other things that are great in your life. Let's focus
Yeah.
on that. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay.
Mm.
And then what was so now your upbringing in
Mm.
terms of where were you raised? Were you raised were you raised in Australia?
So I was born in South Africa, and I lived in South Africa until I was 10. So I started school in South Africa, and then we immigrated when I was at the end of like year 4. So
Okay.
yeah.
And did you find that there was a difference in terms of the environments that had support for you and between the two different countries?
Yes, I think our experience when I started school in South Africa came as a little bit of a surprise to us. My parents, as I said, had spent a lot of time reinforcing that I was a normal kid. I just
Yeah.
didn't have arms. I used my feet because I didn't have hands, but I was a normal child. And when I went to start school, the education department in South Africa actually almost insisted that I attend a special school in Durban,
Mm,
which was a good hour away from our home.
mm,
And my parents weren't ones to have, we picked our battles. Not everything has to be a fight. But on this particular occasion, they felt really strongly about that because we had a perfectly good little primary school in our local town. And
yeah.
there was actually no reason for me to go to a special school. My parents argued that there was nothing affecting my ability to follow the mainstream curriculum. So
That's
why did I have to go to a special school?
yeah.
And the education department actually sent me to a number of psychologists in that process. And my parents were floored when one of these psychologists said to my mum and dad, she said, I'm just concerned that you're giving Kerry Lee a false sense of being a normal child.
Oh, you encountered some crackers.
Yes. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
so we eventually, I think my folks negotiated to let me attend the local school for a term, and if I
Yeah.
was showing any signs of falling behind, then yep, they concede defeat and I can go I can go to the special school. But I think I was in the top 5 students academically, so we just put
Yeah.
that one quietly to bed.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, but then coming to Australia, we certainly had more, and again, I think there'd been a passage of time. So I think that there had been a couple of years past, awareness around disability issues was more prevalent. But certainly in Australia, we didn't have that same reaction to me wanting to join the local primary school, and they were quite happy to accommodate me and work around solutions for me to slot into school quite easily.
Mm.
Yeah.
Now, how did you decide to go into the field that you went into, that you're in terms of law? What
Hmm.
made you follow that path? And how did that story happen? Was that something you always wanted to do? Did you always want to have a career and you wanted to have that type of profession? Or was that something that you stumbled across? How did that happen for you?
I think I always had an interest in the law, and I think I was also quite practical about the types of jobs that I was going to be able to do when I left school. I think I've always been fairly pragmatic about about my career, and I looked for opportunities and looked for roles that I knew I could do as a person with no arms. I mean, obviously, me standing, or deciding to become a tree lopper is not on the cards. So it was very much about the roles that I could see myself in, and I could see myself physically doing as well. And the law always held interest for me. So when I finished school, I had the grades to get into law, and that story is actually an interesting one because I decided that I really wanted to get my foot in the door in the legal profession as early as possible. I knew that those graduate positions are competitive when people finish university, and there's lots of us trying to find work in a law firm. So I
Mm,
thought, you know what, I'm going to get my foot in the door early. Now, when I was at school, everybody knew me. Everybody knew how I did things. I was well known. I was a prefect at school. Despite everybody's best efforts not to cocoon me, school was a very safe place.
mm,
I didn't come up against too many of those challenges where I had to sort of prove that I was capable of doing the things that I wanted to do. And then all of a sudden, I started looking for work, and I realized that it was actually going to be quite difficult. I I struggled with whether I needed to give people the heads up that I had no arms, or whether I just sort of walked in there and sort of, surprise on the day.
mm.
And initially, what I did, as in with these positions that I'd found, I thought,
Is this when
you
you
know,
were going for interviews? Is that
yeah. When I
like,
was going for the
yeah,
interview, so I decided to look at a lot of the entry level jobs in law firms were around attending settlements and filing with big heavy documents. I thought, well, those roles aren't going to work for me. I'm not going to be able to physically do those. So I looked at a little bit more broadly and came across debt control positions. So
mm,
essentially chasing up on the firm's debts, getting on the phone. I thought, it's not a legal job per se, but it's a job in a law firm. It's something
mm,
that I can do, and it'll just give me that foot in the door that I was looking for
yeah,
while I finished studying. And yeah, so going along to these interviews, and initially I did choose to give people the heads up that I had no arms, but on more than one occasion, I just had heard the subtle shift in their voice as soon as I'd said that. And You know, it went from, oh, no, we're really interested in meeting you, your application's strong, you've got the experience that we need, to, okay, yeah, that's interesting. Okay, Kerry, we'll just come in anyway, and we'll just have a chat.
Oh.
Yeah, so it kind of it took the wind out of my sails a little bit, and I could tell that perhaps there were some preconceptions forming before I'd even opened my mouth about why I was suitable for the role. And so I did change tack along the way. I thought, no, just don't mention anything over the phone. Rather just walk in there confidently and run with it. But again, using that element of surprise didn't work in my favor either, because I think some people were so surprised that they didn't actually listen to anything that I was saying, and were probably more worried about the logistics of how they were going to have this person with no arms in their office. So eventually, it was about a year, and I still didn't have a job. I still hadn't secured work in a law firm, and I thought, no, come on, this is what I really want to do. I'm not going to give up now. And so I found a recruitment agent, and I said to her, I just need somebody to go into bat for me. So she spent some considerable time, getting to know me, understanding what my strengths were, what I ultimately wanted to do, and then she was basically my cheerleader in that process.
I love that. I love that. So we have a lot of members that are on today that are from our Worth Women community. So a lot of women that have their own businesses, are growing in their careers, breaking glass ceilings, and doing the support that's needed for other women in business environments. And we all feel that glass ceiling as women. It definitely is something. And then for yourself to add the disability to it as well makes things a lot more difficult. There's two things that I really want to touch on, and I would love your input. So the first one is being a woman and going into law and breaking those glass ceilings and having a disability. What kept you going? What kept you going? And the second one is we can't function alone, right? We are unable to function. And I'm putting together a speech that I've done before. However, there's a piece of work that I've added to it for Friday about high-performing teams. And one of the things it talks about is how, you've got your Maslow hierarchy of needs. And he always suggested or insinuated that our basic needs are shelter, food, water, right? And that's being turned upside down, because as infants, we don't have access to that without social connection, without a team around us to actually access that for us. So social connection is now being seen as the most important need as an infant and as a human. And bringing in that recruitment agent and having her bat for you and creating a team around you, I suggest that to everyone. Often we think, this one's going to let me down, or they're not going to help me, or everyone has their own interests before mine. How do I find that team that's going to bat for me? And I'd love to hear your input on that as women in the workplace, as women in business, women with disabilities, women that are coming from underprivileged areas, from poverty, from abusive marriages, etc. How do we find those team members to bat for us, and how do we break through those glass ceilings like you have done with the right team?
Yeah. So I've got a couple of discussion points here that I'm really glad you asked those questions, because I'm going to share with the group something that's really, really special about my workplace now. So in terms of how I found that particular recruitment agent, I was actually lucky that I had a referral from somebody else who had used her before, and who got a sense of the type of person that she was, and the fact that she really cared about her clients. And I was her client in that instance. So yes, she was obviously recruiting for law firms, but she just made me feel that she was really invested in the outcome for me as well, and really cared about helping me get to where I wanted to go. So other than that, other than finding, but perhaps finding something that, or finding someone that other people have used previously, or going on recommendations. But I think the key for me was that I connected with her. Her and I built that rapport quite quickly, and I think we feel that instinctively with someone, particularly when when we're asking for somebody's help, and we sort of showing that vulnerability. I think that it's obvious early on whether you've got that genuine connection with that person, and whether you trust them to help you with what you need help with. So that I think that would be key, is to really listen to your instincts around whether you're gelling with that person, and whether that trust is there. One thing I do really want to share here, Samantha, if you don't mind, is what has happened for me journey-wise as a person with a disability in a workplace. So one of my biggest challenges, whether I'm at work or anywhere, is being able to go to the bathroom. So that's the one thing that I'm not independent with when I'm outside of my own home. I have to have somebody come into a bathroom with me and help me with the clothing aspect of going to the loo. So for years in the workplace, I actually relied on formal support services. I relied on community care agencies to come into my workplace twice a day at set times of the day to give me a hand going to the loo. I was grateful that those services were available, but obviously when you've got somebody coming at 10:30 and 2 o'clock, the obvious question is, well, what happens outside of 10:30 and 2?
Yeah, absolutely.
2 o'clock. So my water intake was done with precision timing. I had to be really strict about when I stopped drinking water, because I knew it took 45 minutes to get to my bladder. So it was a very structured approach, and I was also quite reluctant to let too many people see that those people were there to help me with the bathroom. Despite being somebody who's very open and very willing to share information, I just felt that particular aspect of my life eroded my sense of independence and how people may have perceived my capability. So I tended not to try and keep it as hidden as possible. But the reality was, these lovely ladies wore bright red shirts, so there was no way that they were going to be unseen coming into my workplace. And one day somebody said to me, a female colleague, she's like, "Oh, who are those ladies with the red shirts that come in here twice a day?" Now, part of me wanted to say, "Oh, look, that's private. I'd rather not discuss it." But I thought, no, just share. So I did. I said, "Oh, I can't go to the bathroom, by myself. So those community care staff come in and give me a hand twice a day." And she said, "Oh, that's what we all thought." She said, "Well, you do know that I'm here as backup if ever you need help. If ever you need assistance, you just have to ask. It's really no big deal." And I thought to myself, I'm like, it is no big deal. Like, everybody has to go to the bathroom. And that was just like a bit of a flick of a switch for me, because all of a sudden I felt safe. There was a degree of safety at work that I hadn't had previously. I was always a bit on edge about whether I'd need their assistance outside of the set times, or whether I was going to be in a meeting when they arrived. So there was this degree of anxiety that was always there. And all of a sudden I had this, as soon as one person offered to give me a hand, more and more ladies said, "Oh, by the way, add me to the list. I'm more than happy to give you a hand." And at these workplaces, I've had this tribe of women who are now the ones that I rely on to help me, and I don't have to have formal support services anymore. I haven't had formal support services for years, because I know that I've got this wonderful network at work that, and everybody knows that I need help with the bathroom. It's no secret in my office. So even if I'm in a meeting and there'd be other colleagues there, if I sort of give the sign to a female friend that I need her assistance, people say, "Oh yeah, you duck off and help Kerry, and we'll carry on when you guys get back." So it's not a big deal. It's just this lovely, safe environment that has really enabled me to focus on doing my jobs well and thriving in the workplace, rather than worrying about a really small part of daily life.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm so glad you shared that. I love the fact that another woman reached out to you and asked you and offered, and I love the vulnerability as well. We don't like to be vulnerable. And I wrote an article a couple of years ago about the queen bee syndrome, and I find that that's something that women come up against all the time. unfortunately, and young women come up against that as well, because they don't actually realize that women that are more experienced, older than them, don't actually want to support them as much as they think they do.
Yeah.
However, that is not the case generally. It's not the case generally, and women are often so guarded around any weaknesses that they have, and one common one that comes up with everyone is children, right? So having to not come to work because your child's sick, or having to go and pick up children or drop off children or bring a child to work, or anything like that, that is often frowned upon, or was, until women, like you said, until they became this tribe where it was more about, hey, we've got your back, we'll support you. This is normal. This is the way life is. Everyone has something, and we'll support you. And I think that's incredible. And it's such a good story to share, so that other women know how to ask and also how to accept the help and not be so guarded.
No, it was honestly life-changing for me. Like my whole feeling about going to work shifted as soon as I had that informal support network there. And it's not just women in my workplaces either. I mean, obviously it's ladies who help me with that particular aspect of my life, but I've got, lovely men at work as well who will say, oh, I'm going through to make a cup of tea. Would you like me to make you a cup of tea?
Yeah.
People know that I need help putting my bag on my back in the afternoon when I leave. So that's all of that shared amongst everybody that I work with. And I'm really, really lucky. And I think it's such a lovely demonstration of like that power of human connection, and also that being vulnerable is a strength.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that story. Thank you for sharing that.
My pleasure.
Now, another incredible part of you is your open water swimming. And that's how I know you. So tell us about that. How did you get into that? And it's an incredible, I follow you on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. And and I watch in absolute awe the incredible open water swims that you do, and how you inspire everyone around you to absolutely live life to the fullest. And even your travels, I watch you and your partner travel and make amazing boerewors and it motivates me, it inspires me to want to get out there more, to want to do things more. And I know that anyone that follows you and knows you feels the same way. So tell us about that part of your life.
So swimming has actually been a huge part of my life since I was at school. I was not an athletic child at all. I was one of the kids that you'd find in the library at lunchtime reading a book. I did not play sport. But it was part of school life that I probably felt was missing for me. I desperately wanted to be part of a team. I joined the debating team and I joined choir, but I don't think it's quite the same as being part of a sports team. And my parents had sent me along to swimming lessons very reluctantly. Well, I was reluctant to go to swimming lessons as a young child, but they needed to make me water safe. Otherwise, if I fell into a pool, I'd drown. So I could swim, and I enjoyed swimming, but I'd never trained. And it got to upper high school, and this school swim coach, James, who was relatively new to the school, he saw me doing my obligatory 50-meter breaststroke race for the Interhouse Carnival. And he said to me, come and join the squad. He said, you can swim. He said, I'll train you. And that was like, that sort of set the trajectory of my life, I think. And I recently got the opportunity to tell James that, 20 years later.
I love that. Have you heard of that TEDx talk, the lollipop moment?
No.
Oh, that's exactly what James is.
Okay.
It's that moment, and I suggest everyone on this call go and have a look at it. If you just type in TEDx talk lollipop moments, it will pop up. Okay. And it's those moments when someone has that connection with you. They say something, they do something, and it changes your life forever. It changes your life, and they don't even know it. So when you go back to them and you say to them, hey, you changed the trajectory of my life, they don't even know. I mean, I've had one or two people, when they say that to me, I don't even know who they are. I'm like, I'm sorry, where did I meet you? I don't even know. I can't remember meeting you. And what did he say, Kerry? What did he say when you told him that?
Oh, it was actually it was a very emotional moment for me. And he's like, oh, but it's also on you. I'm like, no, James, it's not on me. I said, yes, I love swimming. I said, but you were the person who gave me a shot at being part of a squad, being part of a team. And he was such an enthusiastic coach, and he was so passionate about swimming, and he just lit a fire in me to really want to give it my all.
Yeah.
And even when I set initially I'd set my sights on doing representative pool swimming and becoming a Paralympian and all of that. And I just couldn't, I couldn't choose swimming or university or working. I wanted to do all three. And the result of that was that I failed an entire semester of university. And it was that point that my parents said to me, we think you need to choose. You need to choose the thing that you really want to do, because you're not going to be able to sustain doing all three of these. And at that point in time, getting my tertiary qualification was the most important thing for me. So that's when competitive swimming took a backseat. But it was for the better, because it was that at that point that James said to me, he said, look, why don't you give pool swimming a bit of a break? Why don't you can have a go at ocean swimming? I was like, oh, ocean swimming. He's like, yes. He said, it's something different. It's a different focus for you. Go and have a go at ocean swimming. So that's how I started. And my very first ocean swim was 1 kilometer at Mooloolaba in 2005. We swam down from the Spit up to the surf club, and I thought that I'd just bloody conquered Everest swimming 1 kilometer in the open ocean. I was so chuffed with myself. My dad swam alongside me. And so from there on in, I started doing more and more open water swimming.
Yeah.
And it was only ever sort of 1 kilometer events. And I can remember standing on a beach looking at, the likes of our mutual friend Brendan, who was standing there for the 2 or 3K, thinking that they were these ocean gods who could swim for miles, because in my mind, 1 kilometer was this massive feat. And, God, could never do 2Ks. But that's where that whole idea of exploring and expanding what's possible comes in, because with training and with commitment to the sport, I'm now looking at a 20K swim later this year. So
that's incredible. That is incredible.
So sorry, Samantha, you go.
With the swimming, how did you make that jump? So when you say that's when the pushing of the limits, finding out what is possible, how far can you go? How far can you push yourself? How did that start for you? Was there a moment when you were like, hey, I can do more? Or
I think so. I think it was when those smaller distances became, dare I say, easy, and without sounding full of myself, when you're a swimmer and when you're training, all of a sudden that 1 kilometer distance became a little bit easier. I thought, oh, maybe I can do two. No, I think I did a 1.5 kilometer swim as part of a team triathlon. I think that was it. Somebody asked me if I wanted to join a team triathlon, and there was a 1.5K swim. I was like, oh yeah, I'll do 1.5Ks. And I was very chuffed with myself. And I think it was just that sort of incremental increase. I'm like, well, I didn't die in 1.5 kilometers. Maybe I can do 2 kilometers. And so I just slowly increased that distance. I remember my very first 3.5 kilometer swim that was actually over in Fiji on an ocean swimming holiday. It was incredible.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the program swims while we were on holiday was from one island in Fiji across to another, and it was 3.5 Ks.
No sharks or anything?
Oh, there's probably sharks, but we don't think about that. There's sharks everywhere. Yeah. And to be honest, well, to be honest, I think the universe would have to hate me if I get bitten by a shark. I'm just resting on the fact that, maybe they'll say, she's only got two to work with, leave her alone.
That would be so unfair.
And I can remember that 3.5K swim being a big deal, because it was across like a channel. The water was quite rough, but we're in a group. I felt quite safe, and I thought, oh, you can do this. You're fit. You've been training for this. And, next minute I'd done 3.5 kilometers. And I think it was just those incremental little pushes up, and realizing that my body's quite strong and that I'm capable of some pretty cool things. And I think the tipping point from doing these open water swimming events and, sort of this 2 and 3Ks came when I did a 5 kilometer event a while back, and I absolutely loved it. It was a very challenging swim. The water was rough, but I loved every minute. And after that, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do 10Ks. So I went from 2 to 3 to 5. I'm like, I've definitely got 10 kilometers in me. And it was in 2022 that I did my first 10K swim.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
When
So,
that voice speaks to you and
mm.
says you've got it in you, does it feel different? That confidence, does it feel so? You get people that say when you have intuition versus fear, it's a different
Yes.
feeling. The fear, you feel fear, right? And it
Mm.
makes you anxious, whereas intuition, you feel centered, even if it's something negative. So when you have that voice say to you, Kerry, you can do that, it's in you, does that feel different? Does that feel like it comes from somewhere else, or that's something deep down inside of you, or is that your body speaking to you?
I actually think it's my body speaking to me. I think that I actually spoke recently about the difference between that feeling of being pushed out of your comfort zone versus fear, or versus knowing when it's a bad idea. And
Mm,
I think I'm very in tune with when my gut instinct is, this is going to be difficult but achievable, versus this is a really bad idea, I don't think you
yeah.
should do it.
Yeah.
And so
This is going to
I'm
be difficult but good. Yeah.
yes, yes,
Versus,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And I think it's also that realization of, you gain nothing if you don't give it a go. Like, what's the worst that could happen if I tried 10Ks and I didn't finish? The worst that could happen is
Mhm.
I didn't finish,
Yeah. Yeah.
versus never trying in case I don't finish.
Yes. I love that. And
Yeah.
that's a great lesson. A lot
Mm,
of people don't start because they're
mm,
scared.
mm,
And I've got a lot of people that start projects or businesses or qualifications or whatever the case is. And when I coach them, I say to them, hey, just start. You can make it good later. You can make it perfect later. Just
yes,
start. Because
yes,
once you start, you know, like you said, it's those incremental additions which make it perfect, which make it good. It's
yeah,
just the start that's really important.
yeah.
So
And sorry, you go.
go for it.
I was just going to say, I think also for me, it was getting over that I guess fear of, what will people think if I don't finish? It doesn't matter. It didn't matter what people think, because they weren't the ones doing it. I was.
Yes.
Like, the people standing on the beach, what they thought about me not finishing was completely irrelevant, because I was the one in the water giving the 10Ks a go. So
Love that. Yes,
yeah, yeah.
exactly.
So
Yes.
once I also got over that fear of, well, what will people think, or am I letting people down? Well, again, I'm not letting anybody down by trying.
Mm,
And I'm very definite when I set those goals. The goals are for me. They're my goals. And I'm not doing it to prove anything to anybody else, or prove anything full stop. I'm doing it because I want to test my limits and explore what's possible for me. So
Now I'm going to ask you a question
mm,
that's very aligned with that.
hmm
And I'm 100% sure that every single person on this course struggles with it. When you say that, when you say, including me, I
hmm
struggle with this. When you say, it's for me, it's my goals, it's not for anyone else, it's about me, that comes with a whole lot of self-love. That comes with a whole lot of self-love. What advice can you give people that are listening to you to love themselves enough to try, to give it a go, to create a life for themselves, to have those goals that are theirs and theirs alone, not for their partner, their children, their parents, their friends, not to prove a point, for them? What advice can you give the community?
Tough question, Samantha. But I think
I know you know it. I know
I
you've got it in there, Kerry.
I think my advice is that feeling when you get the thing that you've set your heart on getting, like that feeling for me of touching the sand when I finished that first 10 kilometer swim, like nothing else is compared to that.
Yeah.
Nothing. That feeling of achieving what you've set out to do, especially when you once thought it was impossible, is unbelievably amazing. Like
Yeah.
I still get almost a bit choked up when I think about. I mean, even though I've now swum further, and have got my sights set on bigger things. That first time because initially when somebody once said to me, "Oh, you should do a 10K," I'm like, "I'm not doing 10 kilometers. Like, that's madness. Why would I do 10Ks? Like, that's insane. I can't do that."
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there came this, "Oh, maybe I can. Maybe I should give it a go." And the day that I swam into Mooloolaba and I saw sand, and when my feet touched that sand, I cannot tell you how proud I was of what my body could do. I was so grateful of the life that I had. I was so grateful for the people around me that had put up their hands to say, "Yes, we're going to do this with you. We're going to get you to that finish line." And I just felt so empowered and so proud. And that's what I focus on every time. So every time that little inkling of doubt comes in, like, "Oh, do you really think you can do this? Are you not biting off more than you can chew?" It's like, remember how good remember how bloody great you felt when you did it last time. Well, you're going to feel bloody great when you do it again. Because time, you just do it, because time and time again, my body, my self-belief has shown that I can do the hard stuff, and I can trust my gut. I know how to ask for help. I know how to have a really great tribe of people around me. So I know that I can do it, and I've just got to, keep pushing. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm watching the time, and I know that all my members are like, "Hey, we want to ask questions." However, I have a few more. So one more from our side.
Sure.
Do you have any mantras, routines, rituals to keep your mindset positive, to keep you motivated? Is there anything that you do that puts you in a particular mindset for these swims, for these difficult times? Is there anything that you have adopted and that you hang on to that means something to you?
I think holistically, I practice gratitude. So I always go back to, I'm so grateful that I'm able to do these things. I'm so grateful that I've got these people around me who are happy to support me and to help me. So I think keeping gratitude at the forefront is key, for me. In terms of when I'm actually in the thick of it, when I'm actually in the hard stuff, like in the middle of the ocean and I'm tired and my body's fatigued, I ask myself two questions. I ask myself if I'm moving forward, and I ask myself if I'm getting air. And if the answer to both of those questions is yes, well, then I keep going. And I think the same applies outside of the pool as well, or outside of the water as well. Are you moving forward? Are you still getting air? And if you are, then you keep going. It's not the time to quit. As soon as I start going backwards, or as soon as I start running out of oxygen, that's when I'm not so stupid as to say, "You know what? It's time to call it. I'm done."
I love that. I have a similar one when I'm going through something really, really difficult. And I say to myself, is my heart still beating? If my heart's still beating, I can still fight, I can still push through, I'm still alive. And I actually got that from a movie that I saw when I was a child. And it was about someone that had a defect in their heart. And one of the things that she kept saying was, "My heart's still beating. I can still go. I can still do this."
Yes.
And for me and the things that I've faced and any challenges that I've had in my life, that's always been a big one for me. It's always been, is my heart still beating? I think the only time in my entire life that I thought my heart was going to stop beating was when I lost my mom and I watched her pass away. And I remember thinking, there is no way that my heart is going to carry on beating after this, despite everything else that I've lived through. That's just not going to happen, because that's your mother, right? You came from that. So when she dies, my heart will just stop. And it didn't. And then afterwards, I remember saying in those first few minutes afterwards, saying, "Shit, it's still going."
Okay.
My heart is still beating. I can't believe this. This is the most painful thing, and yet it still goes. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that with us.
My pleasure.
So I'm going to open up the chat. If let's have a look here. See what we've got.
Cool.
Wow, Kerry Lee, you are so inspirational. Hey, Kerry Lee, you are truly an inspiration. My question is, what do you believe was your biggest failure, and how did you learn from it? Wow, that's
Yeah.
a big one. Yeah.
And I'm actually glad. I'm actually glad that that question's asked, because I think that my biggest failure was that semester of university where I failed the entire the entire semester. I've always been strong academically, so failing anything academic was uncomfortable, very, very uncomfortable for me, and not something that I was used to. But I think what I learned from that is that we can't have everything at the same time.
Oh, that's
Um,
so powerful.
yeah,
Wow. Yeah.
I was trying to have the representative sporting career. I was trying to have the double degree in law and business, and I was trying to work all at the same time and thinking that I could achieve it, and I couldn't.
Mm.
So even now, sometimes, and now while I'm training for this massive swim, it's taking up a lot of my time. There are lots of early mornings, and when I think about all the other things I want to do as well, I'm like, yep, that's great, but now's not the time. You cannot have all of this at the same time. Your goal right now is the swim. Focus on that. You know, you've still got to work full time. You've still got to be awake to do your job. So you cannot do a million things right now, and that's okay. The other things can wait until next year or whenever the case may be. You're not letting anybody down. But we can't have everything all at the same time. That was
Yeah.
what I learned from that.
That's a huge lesson.
Yeah.
That's a huge lesson. And doing that, or not following that advice leads to burnout, right? And also leads to us not giving out 100% in the projects that we are doing. Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
It's okay.
Hang on, let's see. Sorry, they're coming through thick and fast. I've got to catch up. Thank you so much, Kerry. I wanted to ask, what are the best resources that have helped you, and what resources do you suggest others in terms of supports or funding, etc.?
So I haven't actually relied on well, I haven't had to rely on too many sort of formal supports or funding bodies over my lifetime. A lot of um, the resources and supports that I had were informal, but certainly any of the charities that support people with a disability to find meaningful employment and gainful employment. I actually tell a lie. I did rely on an organization very, very early on in high school called the Horizons Foundation. They helped. They were a specialist employment agent who helped people with a disability find work. And at the time, while I was still at school, it was difficult for me to do like McDonald's or Subway. So I went to them and asked them for some assistance with perhaps finding work. So any of those organizations that assist people with disabilities to find work. I'm also very, very, although I've never had to use the resources, I do love the work that Young Care does, and an organization that provides accommodation for people with disabilities who need 24-hour care. So those organizations there, I think because I lead such an independent life and can make choices myself about the direction I want my life to go. And I think any of those charities or organizations that enable other people with a disability to do the same, those are the charities that are always quite close to my heart.
Brilliant. Thank you. Hey, Kerry, loving everything. You are amazing. What is the most common myth about disability that you want to debunk?
I hope that the life that I lead debunks the myth that people with a disability have a life that's less than, because we don't. We absolutely don't. So I think a lot of people would look at me and make an assumption that perhaps I can't get out and do very much on my own, or a lot of people say, oh, do you work? Yes, I work. I've worked for the last bloody 25 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I work. I go to work every day just like everyone else. And I think it's just let's raise the expectations of people with a disability.
I like that. How do you? I'm going to throw in my own question here as a point two of that question. How do you tactfully respond to questions that are ignorant?
I approach all of those questions so I deliberately choose to believe that they've come from a place of curiosity and kindness. So I don't think that anybody, well, I would hope that most people don't intentionally mean to say something that's perhaps not quite right, a little bit offbeat, perhaps a little bit too intrusive. So I think if I choose to hear that there's curiosity there, not ill intent, then that just means that I respond appropriately as well. And I try to always respond very graciously, and gently educate, but without making that other person feel uncomfortable. I just don't see a place for it. I get asked all sorts of questions all the time, and sometimes, I would prefer that it had been phrased slightly differently, but I just feel that they are genuinely coming from a place of curiosity and kindness and wanting to learn. So let's make that process. Well, I prefer to make that process as easy as possible for people.
And I love that. I love that response, because often when people ask questions and we think to ourselves, sure, you should have phrased it differently, or it could have come across in a different way, or maybe different words would have been better. We have that notion of being attacked. We have that notion of being rejected, and automatically our brain responds, right? There's this pain response that we get, and being conscious, and the way that you graciously handle that and bring yourself into that level of consciousness and think about how they must feel. I think that is truly remarkable. Thank you.
It's okay.
Thanks a million, Kerry Lee. It has been so good hearing you. You are a great advocate for people with disability, and it proves we need to look at the ability. What are some other goals that you want to achieve? Thanks, Cheryl. Thank you, Cheryl.
Oh, Cheryl, is my 20K swim not enough?
Will be enough for me.
At this stage, I am very focused on that, but I would love to. So it's a slightly different goal is I'd really love to document or write a book about the adventure that my husband and I had last year on our caravan trip. We had 9 weeks traveling down the coast of New South Wales, exploring as many of the ocean pools as we could. But that holiday was something really, really special, and I think it was unexpectedly even more wonderful than what Paul and I had envisaged. We just met so many people along the way, and it just reinforced how important community is, how important the power of human connection is, how wonderful it is to live simply. And I would love to actually put all of those thoughts into a book. So that's a little project that I'd love to do one day, and just share our reflections of that trip. And yeah. Oh, I don't know. I think we affectionately called the trip Team G's Ocean Pool Odyssey, but I feel like that's that's not quite the right name for.
Well, it could be a subtitle.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'd call it, but we just had such an incredible time away, and just really enjoyed the people, meeting the people that we did and having the conversations that we did, that I'd hate to lose the essence of that if I let too much time pass.
I love that. Do you have lots of photos that from that trip, and a timeline of that?
I do, yes. I actually, even though Instagram and Facebook aren't really blog platforms, but I actually blogged the trip as we went, so that I do have a written record of what we experienced at each of those destinations, and some of the cool conversations that we had. And that was where I reconnected with James. My swim coach was on that holiday, so
I love that.
I posted about that. So
did you plan the reconnection?
No, it was completely serendipitous. And
I almost thought to myself, I'm not even going to ask if it was serendipitous, because that
it was.
So it wasn't even planned?
No, it was on the central coast of New South Wales, and obviously we live in Queensland. James lives nowhere near the central coast of New South Wales, and I just heard this voice say, "Hello, you," and I thought, I know that voice. And I looked up. Yeah, and I was like, and I described it in that post as like the universe just pausing for a moment.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible. do you believe that, and I'm sure I don't even need to really ask this question. I'm going to say it as a statement. I believe that you are such an incredible angel and inspiration to James as well.
I hope that I had even half of the impact on him that he had on me. Let's just say that.
That's beautiful. Okay, let's see. Hi, Kerry. Thank you so much for today. Absolutely loved this masterclass. Evening, Kerry Lee. Oh, what do you wish you knew? Maybe something that you didn't know that you wish you knew now when you started open water swimming. Are there any tips for newbies in the field?
I think my biggest tip would be to find a group, find an open water swimming group, because the community in open water swimming is something exceptional. So that's something that I didn't know when I first started. I wasn't aware of all of these groups along the coast, often informal groups that meet, on the weekend and swim together. I think that that is the best place for anyone to start open water swimming. Find a local group, because there will be multiple people there who will be more than happy to swim alongside you, who'll be happy to show you the ropes, who will help you, settle the nerves and get over any fears that you might have. I've got a friend who was terrified of being in the water, absolutely terrified of the ocean, and she found somebody to swim with her, and she's now one of the people who's doing 10 plus kilometers in the ocean easily. So it's one of the best communities to be a part of. It's so welcoming. People just really want you to feel the joy of open water swimming.
It's the team again,
yeah,
right?
it is. It's that tribe, it's the team, and yeah, if you lean into that, it's the best sport in the world. I'm a little bit biased, but it is.
I love that. Thank you.
That's okay.
Cheryl says it is for sure, and she would love, it would be awesome to have a book. Yeah. Would love to read a book by you. You see, we are creating a whole community that will be your first time buyers, Kerry.
Thanks,
You have to get going.
I do.
Oh, yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone, for all of those questions. We've had Kerry Lee on here for a long time now because we got him a little bit early, and I have to let you go. However, Kerry, it was an amazing experience to interview you for this. I'm so grateful that you are here and that you are sharing your story with our community. Your inspiration and your stories and your life they have impacted me. They have impacted people in our community. You are our lollipop moment.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me, Samantha. I really appreciate it. Bye, everyone. Lovely chatting to you all.
Thanks, Kerry.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.